Hi everyone, I'm Brendan Haley. I don't have any slides, so don't expect to see anything up there. So when we talk about energy and we talk about low carbon transitions, we're typically focusing on the technologies we want, the type of market changes that we need. And this past year, this discussion has been opened up a bit under this banner of a Green New Deal. And what is somewhat unique about the proposals or visions for a Green New Deal is they're making social demands alongside the calls for aggressive deployment of green technologies. And this has definitely fostered some concern and criticism in some factors, because you can understand, I know a lot of climate policy advocates and they've been slogging away on certain policy proposals, and they might ask, well, why would we create another policy ask and complicate it even more with these social demands? And you can understand that position if you're quite focused on sort of single issue politics, but I think it's limiting because we need to look at systemic changes to really tackle the climate crisis. So tonight I want to talk about the connections that I think exist between social security, politics, and major technological revolutions. And I want to draw some lessons from history, suggesting that often the takeoff of technologies has been enabled by new deals that provide forms of social and economic security in new ways. So it might be the right time to have this discussion if it means finding new forms of providing social security that fit well with the type of low carbon economy we need to create. So let's draw some quick lessons from history. So economic historians have looked at major technological paradigms focused on core technologies. So the original Industrial Revolution was linked to textiles manufacturing. There's paradigms linked to other key technologies like iron and steam, oil and the automobile, now information and communication technologies. And what I want to highlight is the thing that has often really unlocked the potential of these technological systems was governments providing social and economic protection in different ways. So sometimes that protection came for entrepreneurs. So, the ability for companies to take risks and the ability for companies to make heavy investments was enabled by legal frameworks such as the limited liability company bankruptcy protection. Then, throughout history, we saw calls for the protection of people and not only business led to implementing laws linked to, public health, better factory conditions, early social insurance systems in the 1870s. If we transport, decades later, that original New Deal in the US was a reaction to the Depression, and that was followed by many Western countries, building welfare states after World War II. So if we go to that time of that original New Deal, we had these amazing productive capabilities, right, that stemmed from technologies like the assembly line, fostering mass mechanization potential in a whole host of new industries. But there was resistance, right, to the rollout of these technologies because workers would have had to give up some of the control of their work process. So if you look at political economists looking at the 20th century, they argued that what triggered a prolonged period of economic growth, relatively low inflation, was a social bargain that existed between capital and labor, right? Whereby labor gave up some control over its work environment in exchange for empowerment in different forms. So union rights, social insurance, pension systems, etc. And so what I'm trying to show here is the right social bargains, are often needed to really let technology and markets do what we want them to do, right? And this lesson might be particularly important today to low carbon transitions, because I think the technology is largely there, we have it, but there's political resistance because of fears over things like economic security, job losses, affordability. So right now, we should be exploring a whole host of new deals that can enhance social security in a way that also accelerates this transition to a low carbon economy. So I'll try to provide an example from the issue I'm now working on sort of in my day job, which is energy efficiency. So one thing that holds back energy efficiency funding, either through utilities or through something like a carbon tax, is concerns over the price of energy, right? One thing that energy efficiency advocates always talk about is the difference between an energy bill and an energy price, right? So of course your bill is actually that price multiplied by how much you use. And so no one actually pays a price of energy, right? We all actually pay bills, and you can bring down those bills by reducing your usage. And so that might seem extraordinarily obvious. But I would argue that right now we have an implicit political bargain focused on keeping prices low rather than providing affordable bills. And that is embedded in our policy and regulatory systems today. And this is because we have institutions that were really designed for large centralized power plants, exploiting big economies of scale and promoting more energy usage rather than less. So we need a bit of a new deal for energy affordability where energy efficiency might be able to play a more prominent role in providing stable and secure energy bills, right? Even if energy prices increase. And I think to do that, energy efficiency can't just be another policy, it can't be a nice thing to have. It almost has to become like an essential service as part of a new agreement. So people need to have ready access to energy savings opportunities. Like it has to be almost as easy as filling up your gas tank today, right? So what that could mean, you actually have a personal relationship with someone who's your energy advisor. That could mean a real plan for upgrading the entire nation's housing stock. So I think, energy efficiency gives a bit of an example of how you can promote social security, economic security, and accelerate emission reductions. But it requires a new political bargain. It requires a new way of thinking and new policy institutions. So of course, there's a whole bunch of other new deals that we need to explore, and they're often talked about in terms of just transitions, transferable skills between fossil fuel industries, making sure that when we do green energy, it promotes Indigenous rights and reconciliation. My big point here is that we need to think about these kind of wonky policy proposals as political and social contracts that complement and accelerate the type of markets and technologies we want to develop. And I think that's what I find exciting about this discussion of energy transitions as a Green New Deal. Thanks.